everybody! We're gonna answer some frequently asked DM questions today. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for about 5 to 6 years at this point, and 90% of it has been 5th edition. Also, out of all of our friend groups, I'm kind of the dungeon master, the forever DM, if you will. If we were to go by like a ratio, I am DMing like 80 to 90% of the games that I'm playing in. And that's fine with me. I love being a dungeon master. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And the other day, one of my friends was asking me for some advice in his campaign about what to do about a certain situation, and I was thinking, and I went, oh hey, I've done that before in one of my other campaigns. I have a lot of experience doing this whole DMing thing. Maybe other people have questions and I can answer them with purely my experience. So that's what we're gonna do. I threw down a question into the YouTube community post area of my channel and asked you guys to throw a bunch of questions at me that you guys had. And I obviously can't read all of them, but I'm gonna go through as many as I can, and hopefully I can provide some advice for you guys or answer some questions that you guys don't ever get a clear and good answer to. And of course, I know in like 2 years I'm gonna regret making this video and have way better advice just because I'm gonna have more experience and better things to say. But before we get started with the video portion of the video, gotta give a shout out to our sponsor, Grim Hollow. Did you know Ghostfire Gaming is doing another Kickstarter for Grim Hollow, and it's a brand new book called The Grim Hollow Player's Guide. And this is basically a Xanathar's Guide to Everything for Grim Hollow. It comes with a lot of new player options, including feats, spells, backgrounds, but also it comes with a bunch of subclasses. Some subclasses that I am getting the privilege to write. Not only myself, but also the runesmith, dungeon dudes, and a bunch of other people that have been brought on to write all of these subclasses and portions of this book. It's a really big community effort, and I really love it, and it's been a lot of fun to work on it. And my subclasses and everybody else's are a part of the stretch goals. So if stretch goals are met, my content gets unlocked, and you get a book with something I wrote in it and everybody else. So if you're looking for a new dark fantasy, big spooky time, I'm gonna hunt some vampires and kick some butt, and check out the Grim Hollow Player's Guide. Anyways, enough about the people that pay me to talk about them. Let's get into these questions. Whoa, I'm so excited. Are you excited? How can I give better descriptions in combat without bogging it down completely? Coinciding with another question, which is how the heck do I describe the background and atmosphere without going too much into unnecessary details? Details? I think it meant detail. I don't know. This one is really tough, mostly because it has more to do with being a good writer than a good D&D player. I struggled with this a lot when I was first DMing, and I still struggle with it now. I was terrible at explaining how things looked or felt and didn't have very many synonyms to go off of, so I would like pick one thing and then use the same 3 words to describe it over and over and over again, thinking I was adding more detail or something. My descriptions would basically sound like, the room is empty. It feels dark. As you look around, there seems to be no signs of life, only dust inside the room. It looks like no one has stepped here in a long time, and it feels and looks as if the room harbors some sort of darkness, and you get a feeling of emptiness as you look at how empty the room is. I just said the same thing like 5 times in a row. So if you're like me and you struggle with this, just do your best to try to keep it as simple as possible and not try to be artistic. As soon as you try to be artistic or smart by using words that you aren't necessarily comfortable or familiar with, you're just gonna confuse yourself and the players and overcomplicate your entire description. For combat, I just think about the actions. I think about it like a movie or a video game. I just go step by step on what exactly is happening in the situation and how it would play out in my brain like a movie or like an animation or a cutscene. So then all you have to do is just describe each action that is happening. It's not super hard, and you don't have to go over the top with it. If a character casts a Scorching Ray and then kills a zombie, all I'm gonna do is explain the steps that go from Scorching Ray to zombie to death. Out of your staff, 3 blasts of flame come out and strike into the zombie. 1 into the head, 1 into the arm, and 1 into the chest. The last one into the chest knocks him to the ground, and he begins to burn and singe as a hole goes right through his chest. He stops moving, and he's just smoking, lying on the ground. I like to put intensity into it because I get really excited and I want them to feel really cool, so I end up being like, you destroy that guy, he's gone! And my player's like, okay, all right, ah! But I think it's a lot of fun. I think it can get people really amped up into the game if you start overly describing what happens. But all you need to do is just describe the actions that happen in the order that they happen. You don't have to go over the top. You can even be like, your scorching ray strikes at the zombie, hitting him in the chest and burning him until he dies. That's a good enough description. That's better than, okay, you did 12 damage and he's dead. For atmosphere in rooms, there's no actions to describe. It's just one stationary thing that I have to capture. So I go about the senses: sight, smell, sound, touch, and maybe emotions or feelings. So going back to the cold and empty room, I would basically say, you step into the room, you see wooden walls, floors, tables, and chairs, but nothing else. The room is empty, and it smells of dust and mildew. You hear nothing except for the wind howling from outside. The floorboards underneath you creak as you step onto them. As you step further in, a chill comes over you. It's very cold. There's also an emptiness here, feeling of abandonment. You can't necessarily place it, but it makes you feel sad for some reason. What do you do? Anyways, that's how I describe my stuff. I'm not always 100% good at it, but that can at least help you a little bit instead of being like, the armor has dragons and there's a draconic feeling about their armor. There's, on the front is a dragon and there's dragon-like dragons on it. Help. This is a bit cheating because you've answered it before in another video and even provided a link to a PDF, and I'm just asking because I feel like it'd be a solid option to include in this list. But how would you go about figuring out magic item prices in 5e for players who have the ability to buy them? If I have the ability to, I'll use the Sane Magical Item Prices PDF by Sidoro. It has very fair prices for all the magic items in the DM's guide. Normally when it comes to buying magic items, more recently, I don't do a whole ye old grand magic item bazaar. I've learned that having a Gilmore's Glorious Goods magic item shop that sells any and all magic items is a great way for your players to royally destroy your campaign. Magic items now, typically in my games, are a rare thing, which is also how they present them in the pre-written campaigns. Normally, there is a magic item vendor in a very populated city, but they tend to only have about 3 to 5 items, and they're normally very expensive. Magic items in my homebrew games are typically found in hordes, dungeons, or at the end of a big boss fight. But if this list doesn't have it, or it's some unearthed arcana or homebrew magical item, I kinda just have to make up a price for it. Now, normally in any other situation, I would just default to the book's ruling. Xanathar's Guide to Everything has buying a magic item as a downtime where you can look and try to find them and you get a random chance and then you roll on the prices. But the problem is that these prices are normally built around how rare the item is, which, yeah, in the lore makes a lot of sense, but it's not organized by how powerful the items are, which I think is a little more important. A bag of holding is always the item I point to go, see how powerful that thing is? It's only uncommon. It can be like 300 gold pieces, which is ridiculous. Now, in some campaigns, that maybe isn't a little bit ridiculous, and that's fair. You can do whatever you want with them, but bags of holding can be really powerful. Not just from reading it. Reading it on paper doesn't sound that, oh no, we don't have to deal with carrying capacity anymore. No, it more has to do with the fact that your players can get really creative with a bag of holding. Like, I don't know, the MacGuffin that they're going after, bump, bag of holding. Oh, that dead body we killed, bump, bag of holding. Oh, we found a portable hole, let's create a black hole into the astral sea. Ah, the bad guy has sent you a letter, but secretly he can scry on this letter and know where you, bag of holding. So yeah, a bag of holding can actually be really powerful just because of how useful it can be. But hey, if you like that in your games, it's fine. I typically give my players a bag of holding because they're really cool and interesting and awesome, and artificers can make them at level 2, so who cares? I've run enough games to know that an invisibility cloak, a Dairn's instant fortress, a rod of lordly might can fundamentally change your game. So as of right now, I kind of wing it. I normally price it based on how powerful I know the item to be, and I typically use the Xanathar's Guide little table and use that as like a judging point. If somebody shows me a magic item that they want in the game or they want to buy, I normally just kind of throw it in and then make up some sort of price for it based on their wealth, because hey, if they want it, sure. But normally what I'll do is I'll put it into an adventure. They'll hear about it, or they'll learn of its existence, or somebody will offer it up as a reward for completing some sort of mission or adventure, and that's typically a little more rewarding than just spending gold. And how do you handle item crafting for players who really want to be craftsmen? Just rules as written, so players can't feasibly make anything rare or uncommon without months of downtime? Or do you have any house rules? Yeah, no, I use the rules as written. I like the Xanathar's Guide to Everything kind of table for crafting magic items. If you're an artificer, maybe you can do it in double the time, but I really like the ruling for it. You get to go on adventures, kill monsters, gather materials, and then make the item. Also, magic items should take a long time to make. You're forging the power of gods into a spoon that shouldn't be able to be made in a day or two. Magic shouldn't be an easily obtainable resource anyways. Plus, if you make it harder for your players, they're just gonna want it even more, which creates more adventures for them and more things to do, and overall more dissatisfaction when they actually get the item instead of just being like, oh yeah, here you go. You spent 500 gold in 3 days, so you have an animated shield now. Unless your world is just brimming with magic everywhere and everybody's got animated shields wherever they go, then, I mean, go for it. Cause when everyone's super, no one will be. How do you handle 2 or more players last minute canceling? For the sake of varied advice, let's assume you don't have access to their stats. My rule in all of my games is if half of the players are missing, we cancel and maybe do something else. To the people that committed their time to playing D&D, maybe we'll play like a board game, or we'll do something else and play like something that everybody enjoys. But let's say I've got a 6-person game, 2 people canceled, I don't have their character sheets. It depends on where we are in the game. If it's downtime in a city and there's somewhere they can go like a base of operations, their house, or a tavern, then I typically just have them go there and say they're taking some time off. If we're in the middle of a dungeon in the depths of hell, yeah, that can be a little bit more difficult. You could have them gain another goal like watch this entrance or escort this NPC or have them sit down and rest for a little while. I don't know, let the party go do their own thing. But if that doesn't make any sense and the players need to be where the players currently are and it doesn't make sense for them to leave or go anywhere or, I don't know, anything, I will try my best to role play them in the scenarios, but if I know that we're going to go into combat, or if they want to use abilities that the other characters have, like the ability to teleport or something like that, and I don't have their stats in front of me, and I'm in this exact situation where I'm stuck with where they're supposed to go, I will use the Keeper. The Keeper is an NPC I made a while back in our old game called Immortals, because a lot of people couldn't show up sometimes, and we were typically doing really big, heavy story stuff, and I needed them to be there, and I couldn't get them out. The Keeper is a mysterious being who exists between time and space and wears a plague doctor's outfit and lives in a tavern. Keeper's job is to ensure that the universe doesn't implode on itself via paradoxes or time shenanigans or players not showing up to your D&D game. They are there to keep time flowing. So, a door can show up anytime and anywhere, and any players who wish to go inside, the ones who are not there and I make them go in, step into the tavern and disappear. For a short amount of time, the Keeper hangs out with them, time travels them forward a little bit, and brings them to the next game where they have showed up and they can restart. This is basically a DM plot tool where I can move characters wherever I want, but also it's a character and a mystery inside the world and isn't just shenanigans. Whenever I ran the Keeper, my players were always super interested as to who they were, and that was a mystery that played out in the game. The Keeper would show up and help people out and then disappear. So your players can be like, Jacob is clearly doing something in the game so that these people can't leave. They go, I wonder who that person was and if they have any importance. In fact, in Nerdarchy's out-of-the-box encounters, the encounter that I wrote in the book is the Keeper. So if you want to use it, you can go check out that book if you want. They didn't sponsor this video, but I'm just shouting it out. What is the bare bones skeleton for writing your own campaign that you would recommend? Almost like a fill-in-the-blank guide of series of questions to answer. I would recommend watching my How to Play the Dungeon Master video. I explain all of it. How do you balance making certain characters shine in the campaign, such as including sections with certain niche tools to progress, between catering to one player or the entire party? I would just do your research on the characters that you want to shine, or the party and what their skill set is, and then go into your game and add some sort of challenge for them where they can get a special thing, a magic item, or some money, or complete a side quest, or get further in the actual campaign only when a certain challenge is completed. And this challenge can be specific to a certain type of skill. So for a ranger, for example, maybe they have to hunt some person or monster and it can only be tracked by the ranger. Then they get to feel special because they got to do a thing that nobody else could have done without them. And then they get to describe the way they do it, and you can come up with some complications for it, and then they can figure out how they go around those complications, and overall they get to feel really cool because they got to solve something and it was all up to them. You can do whatever the heck fits with your characters and backgrounds. In my experience though, players will be very oblivious to this. They will be like, someone needs to track this. I think I have a good survival. And you might have to be like, ranger, you are pretty good at survival and tracking. You could try to find out where the thing is. And the ranger will be like, oh yeah, I am good at that. Some players will be looking for those moments in every single campaign. I've played with people who are just like, oh, well, I'm a wizard and I know magic, so therefore I know exactly what the thing is. And it's like, well, no. But always make sure to go into detail about the thing they do get to accomplish because it'll make them feel awesome and love their character. If the entire party disagrees with one character and that character wants to leave the party, how would you deal with them being split off from the party and continue to move the campaign forward, regardless of who you believe to be in the right? To be honest, if a character wanted to leave the party and go do their own thing, I would let them go off, leave, and then their story is complete and we continue moving with the rest of the party. I'm not going to split off and focus on this other guy now. We can find out what this person goes off and does, and maybe there's some ramifications or consequences that affect the story later on. But this is basically just someone who joined the party, disagreed with them, and then left. This happens all the time in movies, TV shows, books, video games, and even real life. People come and then they go. There's no reason to focus on them anymore if they're not the main part of the story. And you have to remember the main part of the story of your D&D game is the players sitting around the table. That person who left the party should either leave the game or play a new character that joins the party. I've DM'd games where characters have left the party and typically that player will come back with a new character or will just leave the game. I've also been that player. I've been somebody who fundamentally disagreed with the party, left, and I made a new character that came back and agreed with everybody a lot more, and the game was a little bit more smooth and more fun for me to play. How do I get my players to respect me without wearing the DM costume? I'm not sure it's even possible, but any tips would help. There is no possible way that any player could respect you without wearing the DM costume. Nah, I'm just kidding. If your players are not respecting your game and the idea of like they're joking a lot, they're not taking anything seriously, they make fun of everything, or they just kind of go off and do their own thing and don't stick to the plot or anything that you give them, go back and make sure that you are respecting their characters. Have you valued them in the story? Have they been your protagonists? Have they made a change in your world? Have you allowed them to have the spotlight and accomplish something and be heroes? If not, then there's your problem. You're not respecting the players, so in turn, they're not going to respect your game. They're not going to care what you throw at them if you just don't give a crap about them or what they're doing. If you have been doing these things and your players still aren't respecting your game, then timestamp and send them this part of this video. Hey there, players of the game of the person who just sent you this video. This person sent this to you because they feel like that this game is not very important to you. If this is true, then maybe you guys should talk about what kind of fun you're getting out of this game, if any at all. Communication is very healthy and your DM wants you to have fun and a good time, but they want to have fun playing too, and it's hard to have fun when there's no mutual respect going around. Hope you guys can work this out, because you totally have the ability to create awesome memories in your game. How do you give convincing plot hooks? Like, how can you maximize the chances of your players taking interest in looking into the clues that you leave for them? Watch my first video that I ever uploaded on this channel. Take your players' backstory, things they care about, personality, and all that other stuff, and go to your campaign and world and put some of those in there. Just as a rule of thumb, your players are not going to care about your story, game, campaign, whatever, if they don't care about the outcome or the consequences of what will happen. A really easy one to do is the world will be destroyed. Well, if the world will be destroyed, then I will be dead. So therefore I should go do the thing. But if you don't want to do something as cliche as that, then do the other thing. How do you make anything a secret when a party member has detect magic and identify, and is quite trigger happy anytime the party comes across a new item? Edit. Upon seeing everybody's responses, thank you to everybody for your helpful advice. I guess my question is, how do you handle surprises and mystery as a DM. There are a lot of comments on this one saying nice fool's magic aura, which, yeah, that's the easy answer. You can make mysteries without it being a magic item. You can use magic aura, but I wouldn't abuse it. That character took detect magic and identify because they want to be able to solve those mysteries. And if you just load every item and magical ability with magic aura, then you are just actively fighting your player and taking that away from them. Imagine if you were playing a fighter and I was mad that you were killing things too fast, so I just took all encounters out of the game. No more fighting. That would suck, right? You could totally pull off that magical aura thing if it was like a character or a villain who was casting it. So they were like following after like this bad guy, but this bad guy is like a paranoid wizard and casts arcane lock, glyphs of warding, and magic aura on everything. So that way, that character won't get mad at you for now designing the game around them. Instead, there's a tangible person they can stop who is fighting them that they can be mad about. And also, there's dispel magic too, so there's ways to get around this. Magic is an endless cycle where you can go in a circle because it's very powerful. But mysteries and surprises? That doesn't have to be magical effects or magical items or anything that can be solved with a detect magic or identify or a speak with dead or anything like that. What I would do is I would frame your mysteries in game around the fact that these spells can be cast. So for example, in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, it takes into account that speak with dead is a spell and that the players can go to the people who die in the fireball incident and speak with dead on them to ask questions. And there's predetermined responses because they know they can do that. It's not like the game goes, haha, people have been murdered, and then you cast Speak with Dead and it's like, oh no, you've ruined everything. What you should do instead is know that this player can cast that spell and put more mystery into it. Like, let's say they cast Detect Magic and they see someone that has a magical aura of like maybe enchantment. They then go talk to this person and tell them that they can see through their spells or whatnot. This person has no idea they're under the effects of a spell. They didn't cast it, they don't know who did, and now they're confused and want answers. So sure, your player casts Identify, and they don't recognize the spell. Then they start realizing that more people are affected by this. There's a mystery going on. And it was because your player casted Detect Magic that they found out what it was. Try to frame mysteries, encounters, and bits of drama around your party and their abilities, and that can allow for some more fun because they get to use their abilities to solve the mysteries. How to encourage players to be passionate and inspired about backstories instead of making it feel like they're just doing homework before the game starts. Let them make whatever they want and allow their imaginations to go wild when they flip through those books. If they want to make Sasuke Yasuo mixed with JoJo, just let them do it and hype them up for doing it. Tell them like, yeah, that sounds cool. Those are cool characters. I think that's awesome. You should not limit the imagination of your players. You should only really do so if they want to make something that's unintangible, like a Tarrasque baby or a literal god or something like that, or if it's destructive. Honestly, edgelords are perfectly fine, and let your players play them. They can sometimes be a phase or a lot of fun for them to just play this edgy kind of character. Just so long as they aren't like murdering babies or stealing everything from the party. That can be annoying. But if you're more talking about the fact that your players are just really bored with making characters, maybe use D&D Beyond. It's an online character creator, makes it really super easy. Or if your players just absolutely hate building a character altogether, then just make some pre-mades for them. Or tell them that you'll make their character sheets for them, I guess. I don't know. I've personally never come across anybody that's been like, ugh, I hate character creation. Rolling for my stats? No! All of my friends enjoy that almost more than playing the game. What do you do about the character that shows up with no backstory? What about the character whose description is, well, he looks like me? Just let them do that. If somebody wants to play just some dude who looks like me and fights with a sword, then just let them do it. Why not? Why do you need them to have a super important, crazy, epic backstory? If that's their fun, then let them have it. A backstory may emerge from them playing the game further. Maybe they're just not comfortable with detailing something in front of everybody. Some players really want to play Dungeons & Dragons, but they get intimidated by everyone around them because they're all playing the big, epic, ooh stuff, and when we role play, it's serious. And nobody else gets as serious as us because we're Critical Role, I don't know. If somebody shows up to your table and they're just playing some whatever character, just let them do it and let them have fun. If they're not hurting anybody, then what's the big deal? What do you do when two characters manage to wrap the game around themselves, either through sheer stupidity or just bonkers luck? Like the bard charms a dragon, and the paladin is the champion of a princess otherwise doomed to a loveless marriage, and they're both such big things that they just suck in the narrative like a black hole. So everyone is basically stuck along for the ride. Also coinciding with this question is, how do I make sure every player feels involved? Like, is an initiative or turn system outside of combat a bad idea? Okay, so ask your other players if the other two players, the bard and the paladin will say, are stealing the show and kind of making the game hard to play. If they don't think so and they actually enjoy it, or they are like, oh no, it's fine when they do all that stuff, then just let the shenanigans continue. If that's what they want to do, that's what they're gonna do. If they kind of agree that the plot is kind of focused only around these two characters, then try to shift the spotlight more often to these other characters. Saying things in your game like, all right, so Rogue, what are you doing while the bard and paladin are doing all of that stuff? Or, all right, the bard just charmed a dragon, what is everybody going to do in response? And if these other two characters continue to keep interrupting and taking away moments from the players, then just calmly tell them, without getting angry, hang on, the rogue is currently doing something, I'll get to you in just a minute. And if you want these other characters to have bigger stories in the game that coincide with the other two characters, talk to them and maybe start building something inside of your campaign that can be more focused on them. But if they don't want a bigger piece of the pie, don't shove it down their throat. I know it's the one thing people always say all the time, but you can go to those two people and just tell them, hey man, we want to calm it down a little bit. I'm trying to focus more on this other thing instead of you two. To be honest, I don't always think that's the greatest thing to say to your players, because that kind of sounds like they're having fun, and if I was playing in your game and you were like, all right, Jacob, you are kind of stealing the show all the time, we're gonna focus on this now, I would probably be kind of upset. Similarly, is splitting all looted currency between players a bad idea? Yeah, I've done that before, I kind of think so. It'll make your D&D game feel like a video game, and it'll also make your players feel like you're forcing them to get along. It's a good idea, but you shouldn't enforce anything like that. Unless there was some magic item that they all had on them that evenly split the gold. I don't know, that's weird. What can I do to make prep easier and quicker without hurting the quality of my game? I have a video called How to Prep for D&D, and it kind of explains how I go about it, but this was a thing that I know every DM has to learn. I guess the only two pieces of advice I could really give are to dedicate real time to it. Don't just do it whenever you're bored. Sit down one night and be like, tonight is going to be the night where I prep for the game. And keep it simple. Don't go over the top and try to include 500 things in your game. Your players may not even get to all of that stuff. Thoughts on Feeblemind spell? What are the RP effects you would force upon your characters, either as the player or the DM? I don't force RP onto anyone, but for Feeblemind specifically, I typically describe it as the character should act like a baby. They're dumb, they're friendly, they speak nonsense, and they cry when they don't get their way. That's pretty much Feeblemind. If my players derail hard, what would usually be the most smooth way to get them back on track? Like I said before, add something dramatic from the player's backstory that is directly into the main plot. Parents, relatives, anybody they care about, maybe their life is threatened for some reason, and they have to go complete the main story in order to go deal with that. Or another really effective way to motivate your players is to steal something from them. And the only way to go get it back is the story and the main plot. How limited is a KENKUS mimic speech? Can they say anything they have heard? If so, how is that different than normal human talking? Or can they only repeat words they heard recently? Is it completely identical human voice, or is it a Kenku mimicking human voice? Can they change the emphasis or tone of the phrase? What does it mean for a Kenku to lack all imagination and creativity? Would it not prohibit them from any form of activity beyond mimicking what they are seeing, as even combining previously witnessed actions to perform a task, a form of creativity? No, I normally play them as just mimicking trickster ravens people. Kenku are people, they're all different. I know that it says they lack creativity or whatever, but I mean, They're not just dumb birds. I didn't write up KENKUS, so I don't know, but I normally don't play them to this much detail. But if somebody's playing a KENKU, I just let them do whatever they want. If they just want to be a small little raven person, cool. They don't have to mimic every word they've heard, and they have no creativity and no original thought. That's dumb, and they should just be able to play whatever they want. Now flying, though. Flying is dumb and for losers. What acting, voice, general performing techniques can I implement to be a better and more engaging DM? I am not a voice actor. I don't know. There's a lot of people out there who give much better advice about this. I was just a theater kid, and I like to play roles. That's what's fun to me. So sometimes I'm good at copying people, and I can do their voice somewhat a little bit. I normally practice when I'm by myself. A really good place is the car. When I'm driving, and if I'm by myself, I just kind of turn on some voice that I want to do for an NPC and just say some lines and practice it out and stuff like that. I normally just kind of pick a fictional character that I know from any kind of media and try to copy that voice. And hopefully my players don't catch on. This is probably wrong. As I said, I am not a voice actor. But I think the number one advice for performing is just confidence. I know why don't you just be more confident, idiot? That's not what I'm trying to say. More what I'm saying is that if you are wholly into your character and really playing it up, even if you're doing a voice or not, then you'll be great and you won't just be one voice McGee for all your characters. You don't need to know an Australian accent in order to be a good dungeon master. I've played in a lot of games where the DM doesn't necessarily do a voice. All the DMs I have played with do an inflection or represent the emotion that the character is speaking in. So, for example, somebody may talk very slowly, or somebody may talk very fast, and that means that they're very hyper and they're scatterbrained. Or maybe somebody talks like they are drunk all the time, or maybe they're just really, really enamored by you, or they're just grumpy and angry all the time. There's different ways to portray characters that don't necessarily have to lean into voices. But if you talk monotone for every single character, then yeah, that can get a little annoying and a little boring. How do I fill in large gaps? Like travel time. They go from one city to another over like 2 to 3 weeks. It sometimes feels weird when I basically just say, you get there after 2 weeks. What can I do to make that time feel more natural? Narrate and describe what happens along the journey. Basically, what I do is I make like a montage scene that are normally in like movies, or you can roll random non-combat encounters so that the players can do something and role play along the way to the place they're going to. One thing I've really liked that I'm doing recently is I'll just have things happen like there's a log in the way today. How do you guys get around it? Or you camped tonight and it's raining. Describe what you all do during that. And that alone, mixed with some random non-combat encounters, if you really don't want to bog it down, can make the travel fun. You can hone in a little bit of that monotony that comes with travel, but they also aren't teleporting to their destination or taking 5 games to get from point A to point B. When you run modules and pre-written adventures, how much do you deviate from what's written in the book? Not very much. I am kind of in the minority. I really like sticking exactly to the text as much as I can. I have this thing about the writer's intention for the game, and I know that D&D has the player's intention, the DM's intention, blah, blah, blah. Every player's different, every group is different, they get their own kind of fun, but I think it's really interesting to try to play it to the intention that it was written to be. Also, I already do a lot of writing in my homebrew games. It's really nice to kind of relax and let the book tell me what to do. But if I ever do change anything, it's normally to take player backstories and put it into the story. As you guys can tell, I'm a really big fan of that because it works and it's fun and I love it. Talk to your players is pretty much told in hindsight. What would you do if someone tries to avoid/admitting that there's a conflict? The advice, talking to your players, is the default response. It's other words for, look, I don't know your group and I don't know your friends and you're gonna have to talk to them and figure it out yourself. If someone's avoiding admitting that there's a conflict between the DM and the players or between 2 different players, then just explain why you think that there's a conflict. If they disagree and just don't respect the way you feel or what you're thinking, then maybe you should boot them from the game, or maybe you shouldn't play with them anymore. But maybe the 2 or however many of you can come to an understanding. Typically, if someone in one of my games is creating a problem, I tend to talk to all the other players and ask them if they think that this is a problem or if it's just an annoyance on my part. If we all agree that it's a problem, I tend to confront that person and talk to them and say, hey, we all think that this thing is a problem. and we need to talk about it. If that player is like, no, you're all wrong, you're all stupid, it's like, okay, cool, well, we're not gonna play with you anymore. Okay, wow, that was a lot. That is an hour and 20 minutes of recorded content I just made that I'm gonna go edit down into a video for all of you. So thanks for all the questions, guys. Sorry I couldn't make a 6-hour video responding to all of them, but I hope you got something out of this. I hope this helped with your games in the future or anything else that you guys need. Feel free to ask more questions in the comments. I'll try to answer some of them. If you want some more clarification, I'm always willing to help you guys. It's more that I don't have time and I'm busy and also tired. But anyways, that was a fun time. I'll see you guys next video. That's the end of this video.